Hey, Brian, Lightning Land Capital. I tried doing a video earlier and I had the fan on over here, which is behind the camera, and it's kind of loud, so I figured I'd redo it. But just got out of the gym. Kind of deloading this week. I got a wrist injury, probably a bunch of other injuries, but okay. So there was a video I wanted to do, and basically it's gonna go over the 4 ways to not just acquire property, to pretty much do a real estate flip, or any, like, I work with land, a land flip, but this would pretty much work for any type of real estate, that type of asset. So the first one's going to be seller financing. That's what I wanted to go over. Seller financing, right? You can do seller financing, and when you buy the property, the seller, they call it owner financing or seller financing. That's when the seller finances you, and they usually do, like, let's say a 5-year with a balloon at the end. They finance for 5 years, and then, well, you try to get it with no interest, but you figure 5 years, and then you owe the whole thing, the big balloon, whatever, at the end. But to make a long story short, seller financing, there's different deals for different situations, and this one's a good benefit for the seller, because the seller gets to spread out their tax liability. They get, instead of them getting whacked all at once with like a huge capital gains, it spreads out their tax liability over time as they get paid slowly. Also, they collect interest like a bank, whatever interest rate you agree to, and you can also usually offer the highest with that type of deal. You can pretty much offer like full retail in your offer, and it spreads out. It gives you more time to work with the property and figure out what you want to do with it, or just sell it to somebody else on seller financing or whatever. So that's the first way, and there's many ways to do this. I'm just going to name 4. The second one is double closes. That's where you buy a property for a certain amount, you put it under contract, and then you can you pretty much market the property, or you look for a buyer. You find a buyer, whether you're marketing it or you already have a buyer lined up. That takes a little more time than like a cash flip or something. You might need 4 months or more to complete this deal, but you market it and you search for a buyer, and then when you do come up with a buyer, let's say you buy the property for let's say $75,000. You're buying it off the seller for $75,000, and then you have a buyer that will pay $100,000. So you see where we're going with this? Basically, you set up 2 closings on like the same day. Typically, they can do them. Some states, different states have different laws, but usually it's same day closing. And you do the first closing, and then you do the second closing the same day to that end buyer. So basically, you use a transactional funder, and they let you borrow the money for basically a few hours, and they charge a small fee for that. So you borrow the money for a couple hours. You do the first closing. You already have the buyer lined up. You do the first closing. And the title company makes sure everything's all set. You do the first closing. You buy the property for $75,000. The seller gets their spread, and you can do higher spreads than this or whatever, but the seller gets their $75,000. You borrow the money for a couple hours, whatever it is, and then you sell to that end buyer for $100,000, and then you collect that spread in between, and some of that's going to come out and have to pay for the transactional lender. And possibly, if you use a realtor or something, you would have to pay a realtor commission if they're the ones that came up with a buyer for you or whatever. So that's the double close setup, and that's where you could offer a little bit more than if you were doing a cash property, because there's less risk involved, and it gives you more time. Basically, it gives you more time to come up with a buyer, so you're able to offer a little more on that type of transaction. Number 3 would be an assignment. And I've done those before too. An assignment is like, it's all in one closing. So typically, I would say these are smaller deals and smaller spreads, smaller profit, let's say. So let's say you're buying a property you tell the seller, oh, I'm going to give you $75K for this property, this land, whatever. I can get you $75,000 for it. They say, okay, get me my $75,000, Brian. And then you have a buyer, let's say a builder or something like that, and you just want to make a quick buck. He'll give you $85,000 for it. So you set that all up in one closing, and the beautiful part is you get paid right at that closing. You don't have to wait or anything. And you collect an assignment fee. You know, you're up front. They're going to see everything, and you say, yeah, I just want a $10,000 fee for finding this deal. So everybody gets paid. The seller gets their $75,000. You get your $10,000, and then the buyer gets their lot for $85,000. And that's pretty much how that works. That's the assignment fee. Okay, and then the way I like to do my deals are cash deals, and this is just so simple and straightforward. Basically, you buy the deal cash, no mortgage, no realtor, no nothing. You buy it off market, totally off market, straight direct to seller, and you buy it off them cash, way below retail, since you're making things easy for them. They don't have to list it with a realtor. They don't have to put it on the market and wait 6 months or a year or more and risk not even selling it at all or whatever. Yeah, they don't have to pay a realtor. They don't have to pay closing costs. You know, we pay for all that. You buy it cash. You close on it. Now you bought a property for below retail. Then you sell the property for either retail or, let's say, just, you know, 10% below retail, maybe 90% of retail. And you sell the property, and then you control that asset at that point. It's, you know, you sell that for, like I said, 90% of retail or retail, and then you catch that spread in between of the buy and the sell. That's how you get your profit. So those are the 4 ways that I am familiar with. There's novations, there's entitlement deals, you know, you can get into your subdivides and developing and all that stuff, but that's 4 ways that I'm familiar with to do a land flip. And in most, pretty much all those ways, all those different methods to pick up these properties, you really don't even need your own money. The way I do the cash deals usually is I don't use all my own money. I just, we do a joint venture partnership. You go with a funding partner, and they put up the money, and then you figure out a split for when you collect your profit after the property sells on the back end. I think that pretty much explains everything. That's a long one, so people usually like the short videos. Maybe I'll clip this into some shorts or something. But yeah, if you have any questions, just ask down in the comments, or just send me an email. It's brian@lightninglandco.com, and I'll answer any questions you have. But yeah, just put in the comments or whatever, and I'll put the land that I have for sale right now. I'm gonna stick it in the comments. I'll put the Zillow link on there. So I'll catch you next time.